Remember watching the A-Team van roar onto the screen and thinking, man, that thing is unstoppable? That black and gray beast didn't just drive into a scene, it burst into it, doors flying open, Mr. T yelling for everyone to get in. But behind the paint, the stunts, and all those explosions were stories even wilder than anything the show ever put on television. Strange, chaotic, and downright unbelievable moments that most fans never knew existed. Today, we're diving into 20 weird secrets that prove the A-Team van wasn't just a prop, it was a legend of its own. Let's jump in. The paint scheme was an accident. When people think of the A-Team, one of the first images that comes to mind is the van's striking two-tone look. Matte gray body, jet black hood, and that sharp dividing line that made it look like a tactical assault vehicle. But here's the part most fans never knew. None of that was planned. The producers originally wanted the van to be fully black, something sleek and intimidating that reflected the covert nature of the team's missions. But when filming approached, the automotive paint they ordered simply failed to arrive. A shipping delay left the production scrambling with only 2 days before shooting. With no time left to wait, the crew dove into the studio's leftover paint inventory. The closest thing they found was a stack of gray primer buckets and enough black paint to do the hood and upper section. They slapped the colors on just to get the van camera ready, expecting to repaint it later. But when George Peppard, who played Hannibal, saw the rough two-tone look, he immediately loved it. He said the van looked more military, more tactical, more A-Team. The network agreed, and suddenly the accidental paint job became permanent. From that moment on, every van used in the series had to match that exact shade, requiring custom mixing for every repaint. What began as a paint shortage became an unforgettable TV icon. The red stripe was Mr. T's personal touch. The red stripe running diagonally across the van's side is one of the most recognizable visual elements of the A-Team. Fans replicated on toy models, car restorations, and even t-shirts. But that famous streak of color wasn't in the original design, and it wasn't added by a designer either. It was added by Mr. T himself. During the very first day of filming the pilot, Mr. T took one look at the freshly painted van and said it looked too plain for BA. According to crew members, he walked over to the prop truck, grabbed a roll of bright red tape, and began applying it directly to the van while everyone watched in disbelief. The crew protested. They were losing daylight. But Mr. T insisted that his character wouldn't drive a boring vehicle. The first attempt wasn't even straight. The second wasn't much better. But after 3 tries and plenty of adjustments, he stepped back and declared it perfect. The director saw the finished look and immediately agreed. The red stripe gave the van life and personality. From that day forward, every single A-Team van, close-up van, stunt van, jump van, had to feature that same stripe in the exact angle and width. They even created a custom stencil so the prop crew could replicate Mr. T's spontaneous design with precision. The roof spoiler actually served a purpose. Most people assume the van's roof spoiler was simply for style, a way to give the vehicle a more aggressive silhouette. And sure, it did look cool, but the spoiler's original purpose had nothing to do with aerodynamics or aesthetics. During early filming, the production team discovered a serious problem. The heavily modified van kept overheating, especially during desert scenes. Between the added armor plating, the interior equipment, and the hot California sun beating down on the metal roof, the engine temperature climbed so quickly they often had to stop filming. The transportation coordinator came up with a creative solution. Instead of replacing the engine or performing expensive mechanical changes, he installed a roof spoiler shaped to act as an air scoop. At high speeds, it funneled air downward toward the engine compartment, helping reduce the heat buildup. It didn't solve everything, but it lowered engine temperature enough to keep the van running through long shooting days. However, the spoiler also created a new problem: massive wind noise. Anytime the van drove faster than 40 miles per hour, the whistling and buffeting sounds made live dialogue impossible to record. As a result, every driving scene where characters speak had to be re-recorded in a studio. The actors would sit in chairs, hold a fake steering wheel, and match their lines to the footage. The famous wheels cost more than a car. If you've ever wondered why the van's wheels look unusually shiny and distinctive, it's because they weren't ordinary wheels at all. They were custom-forged pieces that cost more than some entire cars in the 1980s. Each wheel, made by Centerline Wheels, had to be engineered to support the van's extreme weight. The extra armor plating, equipment racks, reinforced frame, and stunt modifications pushed the van's weight far beyond what a standard GMC Vandra wheel could handle. Each custom wheel required nearly 40 hours of machining. But the real challenge wasn't strength, it was color. That iconic red center cap had to match the exact shade of the van's stripe. The first caps came out too orange. The second batch was too dark. The third batch matched perfectly, but the paint chipped off whenever the stunt van hit rough terrain. After several expensive failures, Centerline finally anodized the red finish, a costly method that bonded the color into the metal. The show ended up using more than a dozen full sets of wheels, over 50 wheels total, because stunts routinely damaged them. When fans noticed a cheaper replica wheel in a Season 4 episode, they flooded NBC with letters complaining that it didn't look right. The producers got the message. They went back to the premium wheels, no matter the cost. There were actually 6 different vans. Most fans assume the A-Team used a single van throughout the show, but the production actually maintained 6 different GMC Vandras, each built for a specific purpose. The primary vehicle, known as the Beauty Van, was used for close-up shots and dialogue scenes. It had the cleanest paint job, the most complete interior, and was meticulously detailed before every shoot. The second van was the Stunt Van, heavily reinforced with a roll cage, protective bars, extra bracing, and modified suspension components. This was the vehicle that plowed through gates, slid around corners, and survived high-speed chases. The third was the Jump Van, stripped of nearly everything inside to reduce weight. It had upgraded shocks and a reinforced frame to survive airborne stunts, though it often needed repairs afterward. The fourth van was nicknamed the Explosion Van. Whenever a scene required the van to blow up or catch fire, this was the sacrificial vehicle. It was repaired, repainted, and blown up multiple times across the series. The fifth van served as a backup beauty van, used when the primary was undergoing maintenance or unavailable. Lastly, the sixth van was a parts donor. Whenever another van needed doors, panels, mechanical parts, or interior pieces, they scavenged them from van number 6. By the end of the show, it was just a battered shell on wheels. The crew joked it was the van equivalent of an organ donor, sacrificing itself so the others could survive. Which version of the van surprised you the most? The beauty van, the stunt van, or the jump van? Tell me in the comments. The van's interior was a Frankenstein creation. Step inside the A-Team van on TV and it looks like a fully equipped mobile command center. Computers, radios, monitors, weapons racks, and all kinds of blinking gadgets. But the truth behind that high-tech look is far less glamorous. The interior wasn't custom-built or specially designed. It was cobbled together from leftover props from at least 7 different canceled TV shows. The production designer literally walked through Universal Studios' prop warehouse with a shopping cart, grabbing anything that looked remotely military or tactical. The radio equipment? Leftovers from a failed spy series called Codename Diamond Head. The computer monitors? Repurposed from Buck Rogers in the 25th century. The weapons racks were originally created for the greatest American hero, but never actually used on set. Even the front captain's chairs were pulled from the Knight Rider set, rejected because they didn't fit inside Katiti. As for the surveillance monitor BA used to watch enemies, it was actually a modified fish finder from a canceled fishing program. They just slapped a different screen overlay on top. Despite looking like hundreds of thousands of dollars in tactical equipment, the entire interior cost the studio less than $2,000 to assemble. Hot glue, welding, and duct tape held most of it together. Yet somehow, on screen, it looked like the A-Team had the most advanced mobile HQ on television. The van's engine was swapped every season. Here's something even hardcore fans rarely know. The van didn't keep the same engine for more than one season. These weren't mechanical upgrades, they were product placement deals. Each year, a different engine manufacturer approached the show, offering money or parts in exchange for quietly featuring their power plant. During Season 1, the van used a modified 350 small block that delivered reliable speed for chase scenes. In Season 2, Chevrolet provided a massive 454 big block, hoping to showcase its performance capabilities. The engine was powerful, but its weight caused the van to handle like a tank. Season 3 brought a turbocharged 350 thanks to a deal with Turbonetics. The turbo helped in straight-line acceleration, but made maintenance a nightmare. The stunt crew constantly fought overheating, lag, and boost spikes. Season 4 featured the strangest swap, a Detroit diesel engine. The company wanted to prove diesel motors could be used in action vehicles. The problem? It was loud. So loud that the cast couldn't record dialogue while the engine was running. And despite the company's hopes, the diesel was slower than every previous engine. Many chase scenes had to be artificially sped up during editing. The crew joked that the van had an identity crisis. Each season it sounded and drove completely different. The sliding door was dangerously heavy. One of the van's most iconic features was the dramatic sliding door. BA would yank it open with a satisfying metallic slam, and the team would pour out ready for action. But behind the scenes, that door was one of the biggest hazards on set. Because the van was heavily armored and reinforced, the sliding door weighed over 200 pounds, far heavier than a stock Vandura door. To make it open quickly and dramatically on camera, the production added a spring-loaded assist mechanism. Great for action scenes, terrible for safety. Over the course of the series, 3 crew members were injured by the door. A camera operator broke 2 fingers when the door snapped shut unexpectedly. A grip suffered a shoulder injury when the door slammed into him during a rehearsal. The worst accident involved a guest actor who failed to move out of the way in time. The door struck his ribcage and cracked 2 ribs. After the 3rd injury, the studio stepped in. Strict safety protocols were established. Only authorized crew members were allowed to operate the door. Actors were instructed to stay at least 3 feet away whenever it moved, and the prop team even painted a yellow danger zone on the ground. George Peppard reportedly refused to stand near the door after witnessing an accident. In many scenes, he was edited in separately to make it look like he was standing by it. Mr. T couldn't actually drive the van. Despite his tough on-screen persona, Mr. T had one weakness production kept quiet for years. He couldn't drive the modified A-Team van. He had a valid driver's license, but the van was nothing like a normal vehicle. The added armor plating made the steering incredibly heavy. The stunt brakes were overly sensitive, and the widened fenders created enormous blind spots. During training, Mr. T genuinely tried to learn. He spent nearly 2 weeks practicing with the transportation crew, but the van was so unwieldy that even experienced drivers found it challenging. Things took a turn when, during his final practice session, he accidentally drove the van straight through the catering tent. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but nearly $30,000 worth of food, tables, and equipment was destroyed. After that incident, the producers quietly made a decision. Mr. T would only drive during close-up shots where the van wasn't actually moving. For real driving scenes, a stunt driver donned a Mr. T wig, gold chains, and even fake sideburns. There were 5 stunt drivers over the course of the show, each specializing in different maneuvers: jumps, slides, high-speed chases, precision turns. Mr. T later admitted he was relieved. He called the van a steel beast and said he preferred to let professionals handle it. Dirk Benedict's Claustrophobia created the Sunroof. The A-Team van's sunroof always looked a little unusual, almost out of place on a rugged, armored vehicle. But it wasn't added for style or ventilation. It was installed because Dirk Benedict, who played Face, suffered from severe claustrophobia. During early filming, the cast and crew discovered the problem almost immediately. With the bulky interior equipment, low roof, and several actors packed inside, the van felt cramped. During one scene, Benedict suddenly froze, his breathing rapid and shallow. The director called cut as Benedict stumbled out of the van, visibly shaken. The producers briefly considered modifying the interior or even recasting the role, but the transportation coordinator had a simpler idea: cut a hole in the roof. They installed a marine-grade sunroof, one large enough for Benedict to stand up through if needed. The moment it was added, the problem disappeared. Whenever scenes became too tight or the cameras took too long, Benedict popped his head out for fresh air and regained his composure. The sunroof became so associated with its comfort that writers occasionally incorporated it into scenes. That's why Face is often seen poking out of the roof during drives. Not because it looked cool, but because it kept the actor calm. Ironically, the sunroof also helped with ventilation. With all the interior lights and electronics, the van overheated easily. Opening the sunroof sometimes prevented the cast from roasting during long dialogue sequences. If this story's got you hooked so far, tap that hype button and keep the momentum going. The turbine sound was actually a vacuum cleaner. One of the most memorable parts of the A-Team van wasn't something you could see, it was something you could hear. That high-pitched turbine whine, almost like a jet engine, gave the van a sense of power and speed far beyond what a real GMC Vandura could ever produce. But the truth behind that iconic sound effect is surprisingly humble. The sound team originally recorded the van's actual engine, but it just didn't match the intense energy of the show. It was too soft, too ordinary, and frankly too van-like. They tried recording race cars, motorcycles, even a helicopter, but nothing blended cleanly with the footage. The breakthrough came completely by accident. One evening, a sound engineer was cleaning the studio with an industrial vacuum cleaner. He covered part of the hose with his hand, and the machine suddenly produced a sharp, rising whine that sounded exactly like a miniature turbine. He froze, lifted the hose again, and listened. The tone was perfect. He immediately recorded the vacuum, adjusted the pitch, layered it with the real engine, and ran it under the chase scene footage. It fit flawlessly. Fans loved the sound so much that some tried replicating it on their own vans. One dedicated A-Team enthusiast in Texas even installed a small auxiliary turbine engine, not for propulsion but purely to mimic the whine. It lasted only 30 seconds before draining the fuel tank. The van's weight broke studio floors. By the time the van was fully modified with armor plating, reinforced frames, racks of equipment, and heavy interior props, it weighed close to 8,000 pounds. That's nearly double the weight of a stock Vandura, and that massive bulk caused chaos on set more than once. During Season 2, filming took place on a soundstage with a plywood over concrete floor. The crew parked the van in the same spot for 3 straight days. With all that weight resting on a concentrated area, the floor suddenly cracked during a lighting setup. Crew members said it sounded like a tree splitting. Repair costs exceeded $50,000 and filming was delayed for nearly a week. A year later, the van was used in a parking garage scene. The director wanted a dramatic shot of BA squealing into a tight space. But when the van rolled in, part of the garage floor sagged, and the front wheels partially broke through to the level below. No one was hurt, but a crane had to lift the van out. The third and final incident happened during the last season, inside an old warehouse. The wooden planks beneath the van began bowing visibly. The crew evacuated moments before the floor fully collapsed. After that, location scouts had a permanent rule. No A-Team van is allowed in a building unless the floor load rating is verified. The horn played the A-Team theme, completely by accident. In one episode from Season 2, fans heard something unbelievable. The van's horn briefly played a few notes of the A-Team theme song. For decades, people debated whether this was a hidden feature. Some swore it happened multiple times. Others believed it was a deliberate Easter egg. The truth? It was a complete accident. During production, the van's actual horn broke. The sound department needed a substitute immediately, but the nearest auto parts store was nearly an hour away and filming couldn't stop. A sound engineer who also happened to dabble in synthesizers had an idea. He grabbed a portable keyboard from his truck, programmed the opening notes of the theme song, and wired the synthesizer to the van's horn button. Just for that one scene. The director thought it was hilarious and allowed it to stay. When the producers watched the daily footage, they loved it even more. They considered making the theme-playing horn a permanent feature. But there was a problem. The synthesizer wasn't built to handle vibrations. It would crash or glitch anytime the van moved more than a few feet. Despite trying several models, none survived the shaking or heat inside the van. Eventually, they gave up, but the horn gag made it into 2 additional episodes added only in post-production. The real van never had a functional music-playing horn. GMC almost sued the show, then used the van anyway. Most people assume GMC proudly sponsored the A-Team. After all, the van's front grille displays the GMC badge in clear view. But behind the scenes, the relationship was much more complicated, and at one point, downright hostile. When the pilot aired, GMC reached out not with congratulations, but with a cease and desist letter. They were concerned they would be held liable if kids began imitating stunts with real vans. GMC hadn't approved the modifications, the armor plating, or the dangerous driving sequences. They insisted the show remove all visible logos. The producers pushed back hard. They argued that removing the branding would be expensive and visually jarring. After weeks of negotiation, they struck a bizarre compromise. The show could keep the GMC badging, but a tiny legal disclaimer had to be added in the end credits, stating that GMC did not endorse or approve the modifications. Then everything changed. Once the A-Team became a smash hit, the van exploded in popularity. Kids wanted toy replicas. Fans custom-painted their own vehicles. Suddenly, GMC realized the van was boosting sales, and in an unexpected twist, they began using the van's image in their marketing materials, without permission from the show. This time, Universal threatened to sue GMC. Eventually, both sides made peace. GMC even produced a limited A-Team-style paint package for the 1984 Vandura. Only about 200 units were made, and surviving examples are now incredibly valuable. The armor plating was real and technically illegal. On screen, bullets often bounced harmlessly off the van as BA yelled for the team to get in. Most fans assumed this was just Hollywood magic, but some of the armor was real enough to cause legal problems. To make the van look truly rugged, the production team installed ballistic steel plates behind several exterior panels. These were the same types of plates used in armored transport vehicles. They weren't rated for high-caliber rounds, but they could stop small arms fire. And according to crew stories, they tested them in the Nevada desert by shooting at one of the stunt vans. Many handgun rounds didn't penetrate. However, California law prohibits civilians from operating armored vehicles beyond certain weight and protection levels. When the Highway Patrol learned the van had real armor, they threatened to impound it. To avoid disaster, the studio claimed the armor was decorative, meant only to create the appearance of protection. They signed documents promising the van would never be used on public roads, documents they quietly ignored. The van drove on highways constantly between shoots, carefully routed to avoid way stations or police attention. There was even one incident where the van broke down on the interstate, forcing production to call for a special heavy-duty tow truck. A regular tow truck couldn't lift its armored weight. Which part of this van's wild backstory has surprised you the most so far? I'd love to hear your thoughts below. The van started a black market parts ring. By season 3, the A-Team van had become such a pop culture icon that fans weren't satisfied with toy replicas anymore. They wanted real pieces from the actual vans. That obsession sparked one of the strangest behind-the-scenes problems the show ever faced: a thriving black market for stolen van parts. It began innocently enough when a crew member quietly sold a damaged center cap from one of the famous red wheels. He pocketed $500, an enormous amount for a broken car part in the 1980s. Word spread quickly, and soon, props began disappearing from the vans at an alarming rate. Door handles vanished, mirrors were unbolted, interior panels were pried off. Someone even stole one of the captain's chairs used in close-up scenes. The most brazen theft happened during an outdoor shoot when the team returned from lunch to discover the entire sliding door was missing. Someone had unbolted it, hauled it away, and disappeared. That door later turned up on a replica van in Japan, where the owner proudly claimed it was authentically screen-used. He reportedly paid $20,000 for it. The production responded by hiring dedicated security, storing the vans in locked warehouses, and marking parts with invisible UV paint. Even then, thefts continued right up until the final season. The crew joked that the van had more enemies off-screen than on-screen. The van had its own insurance policy as a cast member. The A-Team van wasn't just a prop. It was considered so essential to the show's identity that NBC insured it as if it were a living, breathing performer. Not the physical vans themselves, but the character of the van. That meant if the van couldn't appear on-screen for any reason, production could claim financial compensation for lost shooting days. The insurance company classified the van as a non-human performer, a category normally reserved for trained animals like dogs or horses. It even had its own call sheet designation. The four main actors were listed as number 1 through number 4. The van appeared as number 5. This led to some unintentionally hilarious paperwork. When the stunt van rolled during a chase scene and suffered major damage, the studio had to file an injury report. One confused insurance adjuster reportedly asked whether the performer was conscious at the time of the accident. The unique policy paid out twice. Once when all the vans were simultaneously undergoing repairs, forcing production to pause, and once when van number 1, the main beauty van, was stolen from a Universal Studios lot. It was recovered 2 days later in Mexico, abandoned but unharmed. Rumor has it the thief wanted to start his own A-Team. The van caused an international incident in Mexico. One of the wildest real-life moments in A-Team history happened far from Hollywood. In 1985, the crew traveled to Mexico to shoot some establishing shots. They drove van number 3, the lightweight stunt van, across the border without proper permits. No one expected trouble. After all, it was just a TV vehicle. But the heavily armored appearance of the van, combined with fake weapons visible inside, immediately drew suspicion. Local police spotted the vehicle and assumed it was an unauthorized American military unit operating on Mexican soil. They surrounded the crew with rifles drawn, demanding identification and explanation. The production team tried desperately to communicate that they were filming a television show, but the van's armor plating only made the situation worse. To the authorities, it looked and behaved like a real reinforced tactical vehicle. The standoff escalated to the point where the Mexican military was called in. Soldiers surrounded the set, and the confused crew spent hours trying to prove they had no ill intent. It took intervention from the U.S. Embassy and stacks of production documents to clear up the misunderstanding. In the end, NBC had to pay a $50,000 fine, issue a formal apology, and accept a lifetime ban on filming in Mexico. The incident even made international news with headlines like, "TV van nearly causes border conflict." A real military unit tried to buy the van's design. In 1986, the A-Team reached the height of its popularity, and the van's reputation extended far beyond television fans. At Fort Bragg, members of a U.S. Army Special Forces unit became fascinated by the vehicle's interior layout. They had been analyzing episodes for unconventional warfare training, and the van's modular racks, tactical organization, and compact equipment setup impressed them enough to make an extraordinary request. They contacted the show's producers and asked to purchase the full design package for the van's interior, including blueprints, measurements, mock-up photos, and permission to create military variants. They offered $200,000 for the complete design rights, explaining that Hollywood had unintentionally created one of the most practical light urban assault layouts they had ever seen. The producers were stunned. They tried explaining that half the interior was fake, glued together, or composed of old prop scraps. The Army didn't care. They said the overall arrangement, storage, access, seat placement was incredibly efficient. Meetings were held. Engineers from Fort Bragg compared notes with Hollywood prop builders. The project was real enough to receive an internal code name, Project A-Team Van. Ultimately, the deal fell through due to legal complications. Universal Studios owned the likeness, and selling military production rights wasn't something they were comfortable with. Still, somewhere in military archives, analysts continued studying a van built from fish finders, old monitors, and duct tape. The van had more adventures, off-screen than on. Across 4 seasons, the A-Team van smashed through roadblocks, leapt over rivers, dodged explosions, and raced through countless action sequences. But the stories behind the cameras were even wilder. From stolen parts to off-road breakdowns, from police confusion to international standoffs, the van's off-screen life often overshadowed its on-screen heroics. Crew members joked that the van had its own personality: temperamental, unpredictable, and always hungry for repairs. It overheated in the desert, froze in the mountains, rattled apart during jumps, and refused to start on cold mornings. Mechanics practically lived under the hood, replacing engines, patching dents, repainting panels, and arguing with studio accountants who wondered why one TV prop required more maintenance than an entire fleet of stunt cars. Yet, despite all the chaos, the van stole every scene it appeared in. It wasn't the fastest, most advanced, or most practical vehicle, but it had presence. Fans cheered whenever it screeched onto the screen. Kids begged their parents for toy replicas. Adults secretly dreamed of driving it just once. Today, the A-Team van remains one of the most beloved TV vehicles ever built. Not because it was perfect, but because it was unforgettable. A bit flawed, a bit dangerous, and totally iconic. 15 things you never knew about the Beverly Hillbillies 1921. That old jalopy from the Beverly Hillbillies wasn't just a goofy TV car. It had secrets that could make even Jed Clampett's jaw drop. From hidden bloodhounds to mob chaos and drag racing grannies, its real story is wilder than moonshine in a cement pond. Here are all bizarre facts about the 1921 Oldsmobile Hillbillies truck, found behind a feed store in a state of disfigurement. The iconic story of the Clampett's truck began with a sharp vision from producer Paul Henning, who wanted a vehicle that was both pragmatic and nostalgic, one that could capture the rustic essence of Ozark rural life before setting it against the glamour of Beverly Hills. Henning entrusted this critical task to George Barris, Hollywood's legendary custom car specialist, who had proven his ability to transform ordinary cars into screen stars. Barris was specifically instructed to create a vehicle that looked both authentic and deeply nostalgic, yet functional enough to drive through Beverly Hills during 9 seasons of filming, and genuinely embody the hillbilly culture. Barris, with his extensive experience, knew exactly the type of vehicle that could convey Jed Clampett's rustic simplicity, and the search led him to a completely unexpected location in Fontana, California. It wasn't an antique showroom or a restoration garage, but the back of a small feed store. Lying alone, forgotten, and severely damaged, Barris discovered a 1921 Oldsmobile. This car had clearly lived a tough life, abandoned in a state of disrepair, with authentic weathered paint and rust. To an ordinary person, this was just a pile of wreckage needing restoration or disposal, but Barris saw exactly what the show needed. What made this car perfect was its authentic condition. The entire rear half of the body had been cut off by the previous owner. This was not random vandalism, but historical proof of rural ingenuity. At the time, cutting off the back section of old touring cars to convert them into homemade trucks for farm work was a common practice, especially when country folks couldn't afford new trucks. This Oldsmobile had undergone that conversion years before Barris found it, giving it a ready-made hillbilly look without needing artificial aging. Barris decided to preserve this rust, weathered paint, and worn-out appearance, as it offered authenticity that no artificial distressing process could replicate. Barris later confirmed that even though the previous owner had not kept the car in pristine condition, it was precisely that neglected, dilapidated state that he wanted, and he intentionally preserved that weathered look while making the necessary safety and mechanical modifications for television production. Who would have thought that a seemingly worthless, tattered car would later become an icon? 5 trucks were built, but 4 were destroyed. Throughout the brilliantly successful 9-season run of the Beverly Hillbillies, which lasted from 1962 to 1971, George Barris constructed not just 1, but 5 separate versions of the Clampett's truck. This is a staggering fact because audiences believed they were following the adventures of the same old Oldsmobile for nearly a decade. In reality, each of these vehicles was documented as being created for different specific purposes during production. They weren't just spare cars sitting in storage, they were actively used for various filming situations, including regular episodes, dangerous stunts, promotional exhibition appearances, and even later had roles in the 1993 The Beverly Hillbillies feature film, which brought the brand back to theaters. The need for multiple trucks was entirely logical, considering the demanding nature of long-running television production. The vehicles needed to be ready for filming at different locations simultaneously, had to endure numerous stunts and harsh driving conditions, and required continuous maintenance throughout nearly a decade of constant use. Barris specifically assigned tasks to each truck, with some categorized as stunt and exhibition vehicles, which could be used for promotional events and car shows. Meanwhile, others were prioritized exclusively for actual filming on set and at location shoots, where visual consistency was required. However, the most shocking revelation is the ultimate fate of 4 of the 5 trucks after production concluded. Despite their iconic status and historical value, according to museum records and documents from Barris Custom Industries, 4 of the original trucks were completely destroyed. This decision was made instead of preserving or selling them to collectors, who would undoubtedly have been willing to pay sky-high prices for such iconic television historical artifacts. Only a single truck survived this purge, and that lone survivor was the vehicle that producer Paul Henning decided to donate to the Ralph Foster Museum, located on the campus of the College of the Ozarks in Point Lookout, Missouri. This museum, affectionately referred to by locals as the Smithsonian of the Ozarks, due to its rich collection of regional and pop culture artifacts, became the perfect resting place for this historical item. This particular truck remains one of the museum's most popular attractions to this day, allowing visitors to see and even sit in the only authentic surviving Clampett's vehicle. The fact that the truck ended its journey in the Ozarks, the very place that inspired Jed Clampett's story, is a deep and meaningful connection, honoring the roots of its creator. It was a sophisticated hybrid Frankenstein. To television audiences, the old truck the Clampetts drove to California was a 1921 Oldsmobile. It was a simple, authentic image that reinforced the family's rustic personality. However, the mechanical truth hidden beneath the weathered paint was far more complex and sophisticated. George Barris revealed that the vehicle was not a purebred Oldsmobile, but a carefully engineered hybrid. It can best be described as an automotive Frankenstein assembled from parts of 2 completely different manufacturers. This combination was kept secret, allowing audiences to accept the car as a pure, antique Oldsmobile without suspicion. Barris used the weathered 1921 Oldsmobile body, the detail that provided the nostalgic and recognizable look he found behind the feed store, but mounted it atop a vintage Ford truck chassis. This dual construction strategy was incredibly clever from a production standpoint, as it allowed Barris to achieve both goals, maintaining the antique appearance of a dilapidated Oldsmobile touring car, while ensuring the vehicle had the necessary structural stability and durability for continuous television filming. The Ford truck chassis provided a much stronger mechanical platform than the original Oldsmobile touring chassis. This was paramount because the vehicle had to bear considerable weight. It had to haul bulky camera equipment and multiple cast members seated in unusual positions, including Granny's rocking chair, precariously perched high in the back. The Ford chassis enabled the car to handle all the props, barrels, and luggage piled on, to create the iconic, overloaded hillbilly image that audiences loved. Barrett-Jackson auction documents confirmed that these vehicles were built by combining the 1921 Oldsmobile basis with a vintage Ford truck chassis, proving this was the standard construction method for all 5 of Barris's trucks. Furthermore, this brand blend also offered a major logistical benefit for the production team in terms of maintenance and repair. Ford truck parts from that era were often easier to find than the rare parts for the Oldsmobile touring car, making it more feasible to keep the vehicle running for almost a decade. The $10 Photo Squeeze Challenge. After surviving the Hollywood purge, the only remaining Oldsmobile truck found its permanent home at the Ralph Foster Museum in Point Lookout, Missouri. This location has become a pilgrimage site for nostalgic The Beverly Hillbillies fans who want to physically connect with their childhood memories. One of the most popular attractions at the Ralph Foster Museum is the exclusive opportunity for visitors to actually sit in the famous truck and take a souvenir photo. This experience is not just a regular photo opportunity, but a moment for fans to sit exactly where Jed Clampetts steered the vehicle that carried the family through 9 seasons of television history. However, this precious opportunity comes with both a price tag and an unexpected physical challenge that often surprises many visitors. The museum charges $10 for a student employee of the museum to take your official photograph while you sit in the driver's seat. The photo location is specially arranged in front of a large backdrop, featuring a photograph of the show's main cast, including Jed, Granny, Jethro, Ellie Mae, and also Mr. Drysdale and Miss Hathaway. What makes this experience memorable and humorous is the physical challenge of entering the vehicle. Many visitors have reported in online reviews and travel accounts that actually climbing into the truck's front seat is a much harder challenge than they anticipated. This is a vehicle from the 1920s, an era when automobiles were built on a much smaller scale than the modern vehicles we are accustomed to. Critics have warned that stepping into the photo position requires squeezing through a very narrow opening and maneuvering into a cramped space. This car was not designed for 21st century body sizes, making the experience somewhat awkward and physically challenging for many adults. Despite the cramped space and additional cost, over the decades since the car was exhibited, generations of the Beverly Hillbillies fans have been willing to pay the fee and endure the squeeze just to get that photo. This is a testament to the passionate fandom. People who have driven all the way to the Ozarks just to see the car are willing to pay the fee and wrestle through that gap, just to say they sat where Jed Clampetts sat, creating a personal connection to one of television's most iconic vehicles. The sole survivor was a bicentennial gift. After George Barris had finished his work and the Beverly Hillbillies series concluded in 1971, a dark chapter ensued. 4 of the 5 trucks built were completely destroyed. In this purge of Hollywood props, only 1 truck escaped that grim fate. And this solitary surviving vehicle did not end up in the hands of a wealthy collector or a fancy Beverly Hills showroom, but was destined for a journey back to its roots. This only remaining truck found its permanent home at the Ralph Foster Museum. This is no random museum. It is located on the campus of the College of the Ozarks in Point Lookout, Missouri. This location is deeply significant as it sits near Branson, right in the heart of the Ozark Mountains, the very place that inspired Paul Henning to create the entire series. The decision to donate the car belonged to the producer and creator of the Beverly Hillbillies himself, Paul Henning. Henning's choice was deeply personal, going far beyond a typical charitable donation. He grew up in the Ozarks, specifically Independence, Missouri, and spent his childhood summers camping and hiking through the mountains as a Boy Scout. Henning wanted to connect his massive Hollywood success to the humble roots that shaped his creative vision. The gift was made even more memorable as it was given at a historical moment, the bicentennial anniversary of the Ralph Foster Museum. By donating American television's most iconic vehicle on the museum's 200th anniversary, Henning performed a deeply connective act, honoring both the organization's milestone and the Ozark heritage he brought to audiences across America. The Ralph Foster Museum, affectionately called the Smithsonian of the Ozarks by locals and fans due to its extensive collection, became the perfect resting place. The vehicle remains one of the most popular and recognizable artifacts, attracting tourists from all over the world who wish to see the authentic vehicle that carried Jed, Granny, Ellie Mae, and Jethro through 9 classic seasons of television. It is not just a historical artifact, but a physical symbol of the Ozark heritage displayed in its very spiritual homeland. Do you remember which items the Clampetts loaded onto this truck? Barrels of moonshine or Granny's rocking chair? Share your memories in the comments below. The opening credits wobble was completely real. One of the most unforgettable images which define the identity of the Beverly Hillbillies is the scene where the old truck visibly wobbles and sways as it travels along Sunset Boulevard, loaded with the Clampetts' belongings. Surprisingly, this swaying was not an intentional special effect added for comedic relief, nor a staged humorous scene to emphasize their awkwardness. Instead, it was the authentic result of the vehicle's inherent poor handling characteristics. The opening sequence unintentionally captured the real mechanical difficulties of driving a 40-year-old hybrid vehicle. This car was cobbled together from mismatched parts, an Oldsmobile body on a Ford chassis, and was never originally designed to run smoothly on modern highways. Max Baer Jr., who played Jethro Bodine and spent countless hours driving or riding in the truck during filming, confirmed in later interviews that the vehicle truly handled poorly and was extremely difficult to control on the road. The image of the overloaded truck with Granny perched precariously on her rocking chair in the back and the loyal hound Duke moving erratically became one of television's most iconic sequences. This visible wobble inadvertently added a layer of authenticity to the show's premise. The story of hillbillies lost and detached from the big city environment. The truck's shaking visually reinforced the idea that the Clampetts were traveling from a simple rural world into unfamiliar, complex, and unaccommodating territory. Safety was prioritized over authenticity. Although George Barris was famous for intentionally retaining the vehicle's old, weathered, and rusty appearance to maintain the authentic hillbilly aesthetic, the truth is that he simultaneously implemented extensive structural safety modifications. Crucially, these modifications were cleverly hidden from the camera lens, leaving television audiences completely unaware that they were looking at a heavily reinforced and robust vehicle. The necessity for these changes stemmed from the demanding requirements of the Beverly Hillbillies production. The truck not only had to drive through Los Angeles traffic, but also needed to safely transport multiple cast members in unusual positions. Imagine Granny, Daisy Moses, precariously seated on her rocking chair, placed high in the back of the truck bed, or other actors clinging to various parts of the vehicle during continuous filming for nearly a decade. Absolute safety was the top priority, despite the fragile appearance the car projected. Barris's construction documents revealed the technical details of this reinforcement process. He reinforced the wooden floor sections of the truck bed by using fiberglass and supporting metal bars. These modern support structures were built beneath or entirely within the original wooden structures. The purpose was to provide strength and stability, allowing the car to handle loads far exceeding what a genuinely rotting 1920s vehicle could withstand. Thanks to these hidden reinforcements, the production team could fully load the truck bed with barrels, furniture, luggage, and multiple cast members without the risk of structural failure or creating dangerous situations during filming. Additionally, other safety modifications extended to the mechanical system, brake components, and chassis structure, all of which were upgraded to meet the demands of television production. Dismantled for international travel. In July 1967, Paul Henning made an incredibly ambitious production decision, taking the entire cast and crew to England to film episodes where Jed Clampett unexpectedly inherits a castle. The biggest challenge was how to get the iconic truck to England to maintain the visual continuity that the audience was accustomed to. Transporting a large, fragile hybrid vehicle, part Oldsmobile, part Ford, across the Atlantic required complex logistical planning. The crew couldn't simply drive the car onto a cargo ship and hope for the best. The solution devised was to completely dismantle the car into its constituent parts. This meant separating the Oldsmobile body from the Ford chassis, removing the wheels and critical mechanical components. Everything was then carefully packaged to ensure safety for the long ocean journey. When all the parts arrived in London, the crew faced a near-impossible task: rebuilding the entire car from scratch on English soil. This process turned the car from a functional vehicle back into a collection of parts that needed reassembly, often without all the tools and resources they had readily available in California. Despite this, the effort succeeded, and audiences got to see the Clampetts driving their familiar truck through the streets of London, though few realized the costly and complex disassembly and reassembly process that made those scenes possible. The father-son hound duo. Duke, the gray, sad-eyed, seemingly lazy bloodhound, was a familiar sight next to Jed Clampett throughout all 9 seasons, serving as the loyal companion to the family patriarch. This character was an essential part of the authentic hillbilly picture Paul Henning wanted to paint. However, few people know that the on-screen Duke was actually portrayed by not one, but 2 different bloodhounds. The magic of Hollywood made the transition between the 2 dogs so seamless that audiences were completely unaware. The secret lay in their real-life father and son relationship. The original Duke was named Stretch. Stretch was a famous dog actor, owned and trained by Frank Inn, a legendary Hollywood animal trainer. Inn provided animals for all three of Paul Henning's hit shows, including the Beverly Hillbillies, Petticoat Junction, and Green Acres. Stretch had an impressive resume before joining the Clampetts. He had appeared as Old Blue in the film No Time for Sergeants and had worked on the Tennessee Ernie Ford Show for 5 years. Although the on-screen Duke character was often depicted as slow and sleepy, consistent with the humorous stereotype of bloodhounds, the real-life Stretch was a very active working dog, continuously involved in many film and television projects. When Stretch passed away at the age of 16, considered quite old for a bloodhound. As the breed often has a shorter lifespan than others, it was time for another dog to take over. Fortunately, Stretch's biological son took over the role. Equally interesting, the puppy was also named Duke in real life, making the character transition perfect. The younger Duke stepped into his father's footprint so smoothly that viewers never noticed the change. This father-son acting dynasty ensured that the Duke character maintained consistent traits and mannerisms of a bloodhound throughout the entire 9 seasons. This seamless handover was not just an interesting behind-the-scenes event, but also helped the show preserve the authenticity of Jed Clampett's beloved hunting companion, maintaining a sense of stability and familiarity for the audience who highly valued these supporting characters. The secret of the Duke father-son duo is a fantastic example of how Hollywood ingenuity and natural kinship came together to create the enduring mystique of an iconic supporting character. Jethro's hot rod was equipped with drag parachutes. When the Beverly Hillbillies series entered the 1968 to 1969 season, the storyline needed a new vehicle to highlight Jethro Bodine's cultural differences and his embrace of city life. Once again, George Barris, the custom car master, was called upon to create a second vehicle for the series. This time, the task was to build a super-fast hot rod, embodying Jethro's modern and sometimes goofy personality, a complete contrast to the family's old truck. Barris constructed this custom vehicle using a 1925 Oldsmobile Roadster chassis as the foundation. To ensure performance worthy of Jethro's racing ambitions, Barris installed a powerful V8 engine from a 1969 Oldsmobile 442. The car was fully equipped with modern components, including an automatic transmission, Kragar chrome mag wheels, Firestone Indy Supersport racing tires, and a custom exhaust system. The exterior paint was vibrant, metallic red standing out with bright yellow racing stripes running along the body, showing a stark contrast to the rust and weathered paint of the original truck. However, the detail that made this hot rod strangest and most memorable was the addition of 2 drag racing parachutes mounted at the back of the trunk. These were the type of parachutes used by professional drag racers to slow down the car after reaching high speeds on the track. In Barris's construction documents, he explicitly described them as being installed for emergency stopping. This addition gave the car an authentic racing look, emphasizing that Jethro's creation was not just for show, but was built for serious speed and performance. New channel, old memories, help us share more by promoting this video. Every promotion makes a huge difference. Mobbed by London fans. In the summer of 1967, when the Beverly Hillbillies crew brought the legendary truck to London to shoot special scenes for the 6th season, they inadvertently created a media sensation. The show, already hugely popular in the US, turned out to have a massive following across the Atlantic, and this was quickly proven in the most spectacular way. As soon as the cast appeared in their iconic hillbilly attire with the old smoking truck, proceeding through London's ancient streets, curious crowds immediately poured out. They cheered, jostled, and quickly surrounded the filming area. Hundreds of people gathered, cameras in hand, trying to get a clear look at the faces of the actors they had only ever seen on the small screen. Some shouted the names of their favorite characters like Granny or Jed Clampett. Others even tried to push into the filming area for autographs or photos. This chaos forced the crew to halt filming multiple times. The meticulously planned scene became impossible due to the shouting, the the moving crowds and the excitement spreading throughout the neighborhood. The producers did not anticipate that filming in London would attract such intense attention. For them, it was both a logistical challenge and a testament to the incredible reach of the Beverly Hillbillies, a sitcom that seemingly only reflected the humorous life of the American South, yet captivated international audiences. The English media quickly reported on the event, calling it a friendly Hollywood invasion in the heart of London. Articles praised the show's global appeal, comparing the cast and crew to touring rock stars. As for the actors, it was the moment they realized their fame had transcended U.S. borders. That memorable experience left a profound lesson for the crew. When a television production touches the hearts of the audience, it can overcome all language and cultural barriers. New channel, old memories? Help us share more by promoting this video. Every promotion makes a huge difference. The truck's appearance changed subtly between episodes. Few realize that the iconic truck in the Beverly Hillbillies was actually hand-built by Hollywood car wizard George Barris. Each one was assembled from disparate parts, creating subtle variations that sharp-eyed viewers might notice when rewatching episodes from 1962 to 1971. These differences themselves contributed to the car's charm. Imperfect, yet full of character. Barris created each vehicle by combining frames and components from various old models, striving to keep them visually consistent on screen. However, the manual production meant he couldn't make every detail perfectly identical. Thus, in one episode, the truck might look tidier, while in another it might appear older, or slightly different in proportion. These minor discrepancies, though unintentional, gave each vehicle its own personality. One of the most noticeable differences was the height of the windshield posts. In some shots, the glass frame seems taller, giving the impression of a sleeker car. In others, it is lower, making the front end look heavier. Even the paint color and rust spots on the body were inconsistent. Some trucks had darker faded patches on the sides, while others had patchy rust on the rear or the truck bed. Even small details like the iconic brass bulb horn that produced the characteristic ooga sound changed depending on the vehicle. Some horns were mounted high near the edge of the hood, others were placed off-center or set further back. These differences are subtle, but loyal fans easily notice them when rewatching different seasons. The lasting confusion over the exact model name. One of the most persistent mysteries for automotive historians and show fans concerns the exact Oldsmobile model name of the truck. Even sources considered authoritative cannot agree on whether the original car was a Model 43A or a Model 46. For example, the Ralph Foster Museum in Missouri, which houses the only surviving original truck, has referred to it as a Model 46 Roadster in their official documentation and exhibits. Conversely, the Barrett-Jackson Auction Company has listed the Beverly Hillbillies trucks in their sales catalogs, using both the Model 46 and Model 43A touring car designations at various times. This confusion is further complicated when considering their specifications. The Model 43A reportedly had a 4-cylinder 43-horsepower engine. The primary and most likely reason for this ambiguity stems from the car's transformative history before it became a television prop. The 1921 Oldsmobile that George Barris found had been heavily modified by its previous owner, including the complete removal of the rear section to turn it into a homemade truck. Barris then combined this modified Oldsmobile body with a vintage Ford truck chassis. Consequently, this hybrid vehicle no longer perfectly matched any single factory Oldsmobile model designation. Even the documentation from George Barris's Barris Custom Industries couldn't definitively resolve the question, with certifications and records sometimes using different model numbers in relation to the 5 cars he built. This has forced researchers and preservation institutions to make their best educated guesses regarding the exact model name. Granny defeats the hot rod with moonshine. The episode The Hot Rod Truck Season 7 went down in television history with one of the most absurd and hilarious storylines, culminating in an unbelievable drag race between Granny and Jethro. This was a remarkable event because it directly contradicted Granny's established character. She was a person who had never been depicted as knowing how to drive during the first 6.5 seasons of the series, suddenly proclaiming that she wanted to race Jethro's new, modern hot rod. This dramatic race was staged at the Whiteman Stadium in Pacoima, California, a real drag racing venue to provide an authentic feel. Miss Jane Hathaway even acted as the official flag waver, adding humor to the event. However, what made Granny's victory absurd and memorable was the explanation for how she managed to defeat Jethro's powerful hot rod. Granny did not rely on mechanical performance or modern upgrades. According to the episode's storyline, Granny won by using her homemade moonshine as fuel for the old Oldsmobile truck. The plot suggested that her Ozark Mountain Brew had enough alcoholic potency to give the antique car a burst of acceleration and speed that overcame all of Jethro's modern mechanical advantages. This outcome reinforced the show's recurring theme, that simple, traditional mountain wisdom could triumph over modern technology and the complexities of the big city. The 1993 movie built a completely new replica. When 20th Century Fox decided to revive the Beverly Hillbillies as a feature film in 1993, with an entirely new cast including Jim Varney as Jed Clampett, the production team faced a crucial decision about which truck to use for this big-screen return. The original truck, the only one surviving from the TV series and certified as the genuine vehicle, had been donated by Paul Henning and was safely displayed at the Ralph Foster Museum in Missouri. Theoretically, this historical car was available for the filmmakers to borrow or rent if they wanted to use an authentic artifact. Surprisingly, however, the film producers chose not to use the original truck from the museum. Instead, they commissioned George Barris, who had built the original truck for the TV series, to construct a completely new, separate replica for the 1993 movie. This decision likely stemmed from several key practical reasons. These included concerns about the condition of the original car after being in a museum for over 20 years, or issues related to insurance and liability when transporting and using a precious historical artifact. Additionally, the need for multiple backup vehicles during complex feature film production might have been a determining factor, avoiding production delays if the main vehicle suffered a mechanical breakdown. The new vehicle built for the 1993 film added to the total number of trucks Barris constructed for the Beverly Hillbillies brand throughout the decades. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this trip back to yesterday, don't forget to hype the video, hit like, share it with fellow fans, and subscribe for more nostalgic deep dives. Your support keeps these memories alive. See you in the next video.